We all pod down here.
No se trata de con quien quieres hablar, sino de con quien hablas. It's not about who you want to talk to, but who you talk to.
Welcome to We All Pod Down Here. I'm Dan.
And I'm Brittany. And this week we are going to be talking about Verónica from 2017. And we are joined by our lovely guests. We have Chelle and Laylla from the Stoned Witches Hour. Ladies, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Laylla.
Hi, and I'm Chelle. And we are from the Stoned Witches Hour. Laylla and I are best friends for almost 30 years. And we talk about ghosty, paranormally, witchy, marijuana-related stuff and have a good time.
Yeah, I met Chelle, like she said, quite a while ago. She was the leading lady playing Janet in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So she was the cool chick and I was the new witch in town, and we've been friends ever since.
I love Rocky Horror.
Yeah, we grew up on the East Coast together. Well, we didn't grow up together, but we met on the East Coast and we're friends there. And then I moved out to California. Chelle moved to Salem, Massachusetts. And then the pandemic hit and we couldn't see each other. So we decided to start a little podcast where we could get high like we used to and talk about scary stories just like we used to. And now we're having a good time doing that for everybody else too.
And we love it.
Yeah, it's fun. We have a good time.
That's the whole point. Have fun.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, and we'll put a link to your show in our show notes and everything to have easy access to it and everything. So, but yeah, so to get us started off, I'll just give kind of a very general overview. I'm going to say up front, there's going to be spoilers throughout this episode. It's not going to be one of our spoiler versus spoiler free ones. So
spoiler alert.
So if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. You have no excuse. So Verónica is a teenage girl who's being stalked by something evil after she's played with a Ouija board. And so she did this with some of her classmates, and she's attempting to contact her deceased father. But we're also going to talk about the scariest part of all, which is this is based on a true story. And the true story, in my opinion, is actually scarier than the movie.
Yep, I agree.
So to get us started, I'd love to hear, what did you guys think of the movie?
This is definitely one of those I go back to. I have this theory about people attracting badness, pulling in evil entities. When you use a Ouija board, it really comes down to fuck around and find out. And that is what Verónica did.
They found out.
Fucked around and found out. And I kind of went into this. I'm not a big person that likes movies with subtitles. And part of that is because I am a stoner. So having to read a movie is sometimes a lot for me. But this, like right from the minute you hit play, the minute that Netflix, like, from then on, you are just like, you can't look away, you can't pull away. And you're like, what the fuck?
I liked it too, because I liked how it looked. I guess they got a little heavy-handed in some spots, I thought, but I liked it. It worked. You know, all the symbolism and everything that was so thick through the whole movie kind of made me enjoy it. At first, I was like, oh man, are you going to keep showing this over and over again? But then I kind of got into it and I liked how much they were layering on the different images and symbolism. So it was fun. I liked it. It was fun.
The creep factor was so high.
So
it was
high,
really good.
So creepy.
How they filmed it, though, was I think contributed to that. Like, this was not some big Hollywood theatrical production with all the big bells and whistles and, you know, the Matrix animatronic bullshit. Like, how they filmed this added to the creep factor.
100%. And I love watch this a couple times, and there's little things that I picked up on that I hadn't seen the first time. Like at the beginning, when they're looking at the eclipse through the photo negatives, at one point, the one sister, you can see the photo negative she's using is the photo that Veronica's using during the seance. And like, this is I think my fourth watch through, and I didn't notice it till the fourth time. And I was like, oh my gosh, like little things like that I think make the rewatchability for that kind of stuff great.
That's what I'm talking about with the symbolism, because I did see that in the beginning. I could see that was the negative that they were using. And then, you know, the superimposition of the sun on the Ouija board, and then the sun and the symbolism of it kind of being eclipsed going again along with the planchette, the glass they were using on the Ouija board, and then later repeating that symbolism with the light around the moon, doing the same thing. It just, again, it was really obvious and really thick, but it kind of added to the whole atmosphere and the whole creepiness of all of it, and I really liked it.
Yeah, and right before they do the seance, remember when they're telling her to turn off the projector right when they're getting ready to leave, and you can see like the projector sun's just like right on her chest, and like then just turns off. Again, just kind of alludes to like, some bad things are going to happen here.
Yeah, it's that psychological factor. And for me, one of the creepiest moments was the first time you kind of see the creepy ghoul, I guess. I won't say where it is, but they don't make a big deal about it. It's kind of off a little bit, not in the
like
center of attention. Yeah. And just in the background, that creeped me out so bad. And then seeing the reflection, and I was just like, I had to stand up. I was like, that's just creepy. I was like, nope, this. I already knew then that it was going to be a super creepy movie, but I liked how subtle it was, that they didn't make it a big deal about it.
Yeah, just like, it was just like kind of like lurking in the background, and like you'd see it like when she turns off the TV, and it's just like, it's there. But if you don't pay attention, there's a lot of these things that you may not even see.
Right.
And that's part of the rewatchability, because, you turn away, you take a sip of your drink, you grab some chips and dip, you miss some of these tiny things. So there is such a rewatchable factor to this, because it is good enough to, every time you see it, kind of focus on the things you weren't necessarily focusing on the last watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's definitely not a one and done kind of movie for me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of layers with it. And with the actual true story, they got a lot of things right. Like the idea of a very like a dark, shadowy black figure that had no facial expression, no mouth, no eyes, just blankness. And they really hit that note really well. And I really enjoyed that detail.
And the creepy demon guy was very, very scary, partly maybe because it looked human but had no face.
Mm-hmm.
Made it that much
uncanny
scarier.
valley.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how in like the real story, that's kind of how she had described it. And a lot of it, they got very similar, but there's also a lot of things they left out that I thought would have actually been good to have in the movie. Like one of our biggest criticisms, I think, is that when they talk about like in the movie, the board actually breaks, like when they're doing the seance. But in real life, what had happened was a nun found them doing this and broke the board, like I guess over her knee. And they said that this like black smoke or something went up like into her mouth and nose from the board.
Wow.
Yeah, like went up into her face. And the real girl's name was Estefanía Gutiérrez Lázaro. This black mist went up into her face and went into her, went inside of her. And that's what her friends attested to seeing. So it would have been really great, I think, to have shown something like that in the movie. One, for realism, because of course there's going to be some artistic license when it comes into these kinds of movies.
For sure.
For me, if it can be as close to the real story as possible, I appreciate that, because I want to hear the true story, not a retelling or a totally fabricated version of it. This kind of meets halfway in the middle, because in reality, a lot of the creepy stuff that happened after she died.
Mm-hmm.
Where in this, it happens to her, which I understand doing that, but because it would be really hard to kill the main character in the middle of the movie. It would be really hard.
Yeah.
But the true story is a lot of the stuff that happened later is actually happened after she was gone.
I thought they kind of alluded to that. I agree with it. Would have been more interesting maybe to show the smoke going into her, but they without giving anything away yet, they kind of allude to that later. And so maybe they didn't want to show it right away so that they could kind of reveal it slowly over time. So I don't know if maybe that was an artistic license thing, or if they just, like with the father, she in the movie, she wanted to bring her father back. In real life, her father, I think he might still be alive.
Yeah.
It was like an ex-boyfriend or a boyfriend they wanted to.
That was actually a true thing too.
Yeah, that part was true.
It was one of the friends had a boyfriend who died on a motorcycle accident, and they had that part in the movie too. That was part of the original intention of the whole thing.
And I like that they did little things like that. Like it seems to like they don't say the exact place it takes place, but it's a very similar looking neighborhood, similar looking apartment building.
They alluded to the address.
Yeah, that's similar. That's
This took place in a small town outside of Madrid, Spain.
I believe it was a town it was like a little like neighborhood within Madrid.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in is it Bacayes? Is that how it's pronounced?
I think so.
My Spanish pronunciations are terrible sometimes, but
So much like in our podcast, I researched the true story first. I didn't look up anything about the movie, and before watching it, I decided to go into the true story, and it is fascinating. And it's the only record. It's either the first or still the only police report that directly mentions paranormal activity. And I find that absolutely fascinating that it's in an
paranormal activity record. Witnessed by the police.
Yeah.
Yep. And that they've actually put on a police report, like you said. Yeah, that's what made me really want to see this, because the fact that it's depicting that one instance where they actually admitted it, that it happened.
And I loved how they opened the movie with that kind of atmosphere, you know, the rain and the 911 call. I was on edge right from the first seconds that it opened, and knowing the backstory just had me right there. I was just gripped, and it was just very, very well done. I thought the opening just caught my attention immediately.
That's exactly, and that's exactly what I meant by, even though I'm not a big subtitle movie person, this one got you sucked in from the get-go, whether you wanted to read it or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
They even got a lot of the little details about the district of Madrid. So it was in Vallecas, and there's in the bar that the mother works in, they're depicting a soccer game going on, and the team that they show that the people were in the jerseys for in the game that they're referencing is actually the local team that
real
they're talking
team
about, Rayo Vallecano, and it's an actual team in that from that district that they're referencing. So I'm glad they get a lot of the little details like that totally right. And that's one of the things that only a soccer nut like me would.
I was gonna say Dan's a huge soccer fan, so
immediately I'm like, they got the team right, and I was really happy about that.
Yeah, they paid attention to a lot of detail.
Yeah, and they mentioned like one of the goals or something like that the guy got, and you're like, I'm pretty sure that was this exact date and stuff, and you're like looking it up.
That was
you're
a real,
that much
real
of a
player
fan.
they referenced. Yeah, there was a real player they referenced and everything. I'm like, wow, they really got this right.
Yeah, so that was fun. And I love little details like that, because they're one of those things that some people may not care about, but it's just like it shows the attention to detail and how much they cared to not just make this only a scary story, but make it just feel more real because of the fact it was a real story.
Yeah,
it did. And the details, again, were everywhere. Did you guys, there were crosses everywhere. Like they would go out of their way to make a shot where things would form a cross in your view. And I thought, again, in the beginning, I thought, oh, this is kind of heavy handed, but by the end I was loving all of it and looking for it. So it was really neat.
These are kind of the things, in my opinion, that you find more so in foreign made films.
Absolutely.
Where that attention to detail is there and it's spot on. And you don't find that as much in American made movies, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to go to the more underground stuff to get that kind of attention to detail. A lot of stuff like Robert Eggers makes and whatnot is very detailed in that way. But a lot of foreign films really do go to that depth, and it makes me appreciate it a lot. Like, I think myself and Brittany, we really seek out movies that are foreign, because I think we usually get a lot more out of them. Like, we're big fans of Korean horror and Japanese horror, and a lot of those really get the details right.
Mm-hmm.
And
rich.
This movie really does get a lot of the details right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like even the liberties they took with certain things, like I don't mind. Like, for example, like obviously, like we said, most of the haunting stuff happened after she died. But and like the police didn't become involved until about 6 months after she died. So it was like basically a year from the time this incident started, which obviously depicting that over a whole movie, I realized would be difficult. So stuff like that I get. And again, they wanted to make it short. So like in the movie, Veronica dies about 3 days after the Ouija board incident, whereas in reality, she died about 6 months after the incident.
Yeah. And it was like a slow thing that happened to her in reality, because she would have like these, like they would say, hallucinations, and she had these moments of rage, like hissing at her brothers, seizures, barking, growling, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they, admitted, doctors looked at her multiple times. They found nothing physically wrong with her. They couldn't identify a reason that this was happening. And then she just found her lifeless in her hospital bed. And the autopsy stated that cause of death was a heart attack. But
she's a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was only 18.
And just very, very sad. And And then, of course, the craziness really started after she passed away. Then they would hear voices saying "mama, mama," stuff like that.
I hear her screaming in another room.
Yeah, the banging on the walls. Her mother would try to keep the room up like tidy and stuff. And there were the bed sheets thrown around, objects strewn all over the room, scrapes on the wall, cackling and stuff like that. And the symbolism with the cross, like you mentioned, that they found a cross with like a metal Jesus, and it was just ripped apart. And that's something they found in the real story.
The crazy thing about this is, a lot of horror movies that they say are based on true stories. This true story was in the late 1800s. This true story, Layla and I did a bunch that were like a lot in the 40s. Seems to be a lot of horror in the 40s. This isn't that long ago, 1991. Like, that's not that long ago. I understand in the grand scheme of things, that's pushing a lot of years ago now, almost 30.
Doesn't feel like it for me.
It doesn't feel like it for me. Like 1991 was like a couple of years ago.
I was born in 91, so we'll say that's not that far back, right? I think Layla almost fell over.
I graduated in 90.
But I mean, it's not like this is something from generations ago. This is something like 1991 isn't that long ago for this to. This is a modern day spook story.
Exactly.
And it's documented by more than just the family. Even though I guess after they moved out, everything stopped. It did seem to be centered on Estefanía.
Yeah, on her and that apartment. It's just like focused on her. Yeah. So they got away from the place.
I'd be curious now, 30 years on, if anyone in that family has experienced anything else since that time.
Mm-hmm.
Or if anyone who lived in that apartment after that has experienced anything weird. I wouldn't want to live there.
And it's weird that it was just the apartment and like not the whole building or the whole property. It was like confined to that apartment, which made me think it was more sucked into them than the space.
And it wasn't just the family too. Yeah, the neighbors saw things too. That like neighbors that they saw come into their house, they heard the banging on the walls and saw the doors flying open and stuff like that. It's like their neighbors attested to this too.
Right. But it did seem to be much like poltergeist activity. It does seem to directly go back to the smoke from the Ouija board, and it just centered on that one teenage girl, much like, again, poltergeist type activity. Isn't necessarily have anything to do with the space, more has to do with the emotions and hormones and, psychic, whatever going on with a specific person. So it seems to be very much centered around her. So I'm not surprised that reports from people who have lived in that apartment show no activity really since then.
Mm-hmm.
But it was wild enough at the time that, like you said, Dan, the neighbors noticed it too. And the police coming in the police report has reference to doors flying open and shut, the crucifix falling off the wall when no one's in the room with the 3 gouges in the wall behind it. And these are police officers. You expect them to be a little more sober and a little more even keeled than.
Yeah, but imagine what they were thinking when they walked in on that shit. They were like, everything they've known and believed and were trained for, like,
out the window.
All out the window.
Yeah.
Out the window. Right in that second. They're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And Spanish police also have a well-known reputation in Spain of being very skeptical and not really believing a whole lot of things. So coming in, you get a Spanish detective that kind of like the way police officers are in Spain, they're very skeptical, and it's going to take them actually seeing something to really believe it. I can't really blame them, but like coming in and seeing all that shit that made they believed it, and they know what they saw. And it's amazing that there's actually a legitimate police report that states these things.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end of the movie when the cop is sitting at his typewriter, like sitting there looking at like, what do I even say about this?
That might have been my favorite part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, what do I even say about this at all?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's just too much. How do you document that without be like, all right, I know I'm crazy. I might be crazy, but this is what I saw. Mm-hmm. That's all you can do.
And they depicted like the movie begins with the end scene outside, like 2 something in the morning, heavy rain and everything. when the big incident like the major incident happened in 1992, the mother felt a pair of hands grab her feet and her arm in her bed and ran out with the kids and everything. That was screaming and everything like that. They depicted that very realistically to what really happened when the police came and the detective went onto the scene. So like they got those moments so well. And they, even though the timeline was a bit different for the movie, I understand why they did that. And it just fits so well and makes you really interested in the real story and the connections and everything. And I think a lot of the horror in this is the reality of it.
Yeah, it was very satisfying once you get to the end of the movie and you start seeing those little things like the mom stopping and then running around the corner near the detective that you saw in the beginning. You know, it felt very satisfying to be like, oh, okay, here's the ending, you know, and have everything kind of fall into place.
It came full circle.
The connective tissue was really well done and very meticulously done. And the attention to detail really made me love this movie.
The detail, okay, I have to bring it up because it was my favorite part in the whole movie. Did you guys notice the deer and the wolf painting? I love that. How cool is that? It just this painting that kept changing throughout the movie until the end. The stag is gone and she's wearing the wolf t-shirt. Like,
I love it.
My daughter and I were watching it together. We were both like, look at that.
Yeah.
It was just a fun detail to catch. I liked it.
Oh, for sure. And I like that. To me, and I might be thinking way too much into it, but I always felt like that meant like kind of like almost like she was saying like, you know, it's me, like kind of like realizing almost thinking that this thing had possessed her, and that she was the one doing these things. But it felt like that like her with the wolf t-shirt was like kind of like the wolf within, like that basically the thing was inside of her is kind of what it was implying.
Well, even prior to that, her t-shirt had been white with the band, but the band symbol is almost a cross. And she had been wearing the white cross t-shirt to bed through the whole movie until the wolf t-shirt came out. And I loved the transition. It was, again, kind of heavy-handed, but so cool. All the little details just all over the place.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm okay when it's a little heavy-handed that way if it has a reason to be.
Yes.
And it definitely had a reason to be, and the symbolism drew you into the lore of what's going on.
Very much so. That's what really made me love this movie, I think, just because I could watch it again and look for more details. And I like that about it. It's not a one and done kind of thing.
Yeah. And the director was the director behind the original Wreck movie, which is a movie that's very, very, a lot about details too.
Well, might be something to check out.
It's much more of a grisly kind of a movie.
If you really like found footage, that one's kind of like a combination of found footage and a zombie movie. So,
Wreck it's pretty brutal. So be come in expecting that. But Wreck is one I would highly recommend checking out.
Yeah, and I liked also like other details, like when they're trying to like redo the seance to close the door and everything, and you see the one kid. And I was like, this is why you don't trust 4-year-olds to draw stuff. But he's sitting there drawing. Right. He's like, I guess I'm not going to draw this one. We're going to draw the invocation like one. I'm like, no, small.
Oh my God, yeah. When he starts drawing that one, it's like, no, don't draw that. Draw the Viking protection symbols.
Yeah, I loved him. He was adorable.
Oh my gosh,
you have to have the cute factor. Great kid.
Oh my gosh, and then all of them were such good actors.
Yeah.
With the little boy, I was freaked out and didn't expect. I don't know why I didn't expect this. So they're running out of the house, and you know how she finally finds Antonio and she's running with the girls carrying him. I wasn't expecting her to look in the mirror and have him not in her arms. I'm like, where the fuck did the kid go?
Yeah, right.
The first time I saw this, I was like, what? No.
Yeah, that was
like,
a cool
where
trick.
is Antonio? Like, they did a lot of stuff that kind of threw you for a little loop because you did sit there and you're like, wait, where's the kid?
Yeah.
I think that was the big moment when I was like, oh, wait a minute. She's seeing things entirely differently than everyone else is. And I kind of started going back into it. It's pretty obvious at that point what has been going on. But, I think that was kind of like the big hammer that's like, hey, in case you haven't noticed, she's not seeing things clearly.
Yeah. Well, I needed the big hammer at that point, obviously.
It was a good one. It was definitely a good hammer. I liked it. I yelled at when we saw that he wasn't in her arms too. It was good.
Yeah.
One thing I thought that was kind of on a funny note of it that I think you'll all enjoy since you do the Stone Witches Hour. The scene, do you remember that 70s show where they would have where they'd be always smoking and they'd have the camera that was in the middle would just spin around them.
Yes.
So in the scene where they're trying to redo the seance, they're all singing the Centella. the little jingle.
The
and
jingle.
And they're all singing.
The jingle gets stuck in my head. But...
I know, me too. But when they're going around with the camera like that, I'm like, oh, this is kind of like that 70s show, except with terrifying demons,
Yeah,
that's fun. I prefer the smoking and being silly situation.
Yeah, not a good situation to be silly in, for sure.
No, for
but
sure.
the party where she tries to go get her friends to come redo it.
It's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking, but who has a party in the middle of the afternoon? Like, why are they? I understand your parents were out of town, but that
opportunism,
was the one
I
detail.
guess.
I guess it was quite the large party for a Saturday afternoon. I thought.
For sure.
You could see me doing that though at that age. And like, the parents aren't home. Everybody
Any
come
excuse.
over.
Yeah.
Gone the hell with it.
Yeah, that was kind of sad that her friends
Like all abandoned her.
weren't there for her. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was the
and you could
difficult
tell it was
part.
kind of they were just afraid. Like she was telling her, like, when she was whispering she would die today, and she was like, "But come help me." And it's just like it was heartbreaking that they wouldn't help her.
But it was almost like that. We know we opened some shit, and it's only affecting you, so I'm out.
Yeah.
Like they duck and ran, man. They duck and ran from her.
Yeah.
They were just scared, sort of selfish kids who
Yeah.
didn't really understand what was going on.
And I like the part where, like throughout it, she kept seeing the neighbor across the way that you could tell kind of she wanted that life where like you see the dad helping her. She's dancing around singing, just has this real carefree life. And you could tell she just kind of was like envious of that the whole time. And at the end, like right towards the end, when she's taking the Ouija board and she's like kind of like putting it back together, and you can see it's just like kind of closing the gap of where like that was. It was just kind of like, just like
closing the
like
door
said,
on that life.
kind of heavy handed, but really well done and really perfect symbolism for what's going on.
Yeah, she had to say goodbye. It was heartbreaking, but good, really good.
Yeah, you see a lot of the struggle she had. She was basically the pseudo mother to the kids because single mom with 4 kids. She has to work so much to be able to finance all of this, and she's kind of the de facto mom of all these kids and stuff. And it was just such a heavy thing for such a young person.
Yeah, I was in the same, oldest of 4 children. I was the de facto mom for the longest time, and I could very much relate to. She was so abandoned. Her mother, her father died and abandoned her. Her mother had to work so much and basically wanted her to be the adult and abandoned her, even when she asked for help. She was kind of let down, and then asked her friends for help and was let down. She, other than like the weird blind nun, nobody really helped her out at all.
Yeah. She tried.
She did try.
Then the other nun just kind of like, oh, she's just a crazy old lady.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the Hermana Moreta, Sister Death, they called her.
Right. Yes, I liked that. And she liked that better than Narcissa.
Yeah, she's like better than Hermana Necesita. And I was like, oh my God, that's great.
I thought that was.
But you could tell that she wanted to help, but she was saying like, she did this to herself because she was seeing those things, and it seemed like for her it was just like somehow she was seeing those things, and like now she was very sensitive to it, which is also possibly what happened to Verónica, is that she was just more sensitive to this, and that's why it kind of came after her, and probably she was the one that was suffering the most. And I totally felt that because I was like, oh, I remember being like a teenager and probably around the same age using a Ouija board trying to contact my dad, and I was like,
yeah,
luckily for me it didn't end badly, but man, it's just like, and like as she says to her, Sister Death says to her, it's not who you want to contact, it's who you do contact. And I was like, oh, that just hits so.
And then she opened the door and didn't close it.
And that's the thing I try to explain to folks about Ouija boards, like kind of on a serious note. Ouija boards are going to attract anything and anyone in the closest proximity. If you want to ask to speak to a specific person, you go to a medium or a psychic or what have you. If you're looking to just bottom of the barrel scrape for the lowest of the low, whatever spirit of a crazy rabid raccoon is wandering by your yard at that moment, then use the Ouija board. The Ouija boards are going to get you the bottom of the barrel. You want to talk to your grandmother, a parent, a sibling. You go to a psychic medium type person. Because with Ouija boards, I joke about it, but it really is kind of a fuck around and find out situation. I mean, we talk about this particular movie. There's tons of other movies there's true stories based on bad things have happened with Ouija boards. Like, if you really want to make that connection, do it the proper way. And using a Ouija board is not necessarily something Parker Brothers should be pumping out mass.
Right?
I don't
And
think
nobody
so
wants
either.
the ghost of a rabid raccoon running loose in their house. It's
Or in
not-
like our location, a really pissed off gator.
Yeah, right.
right? No, that would be bad.
We have the skunk ape as
Yeah,
well.
we do
so-
have this.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Or
every
just
state's
Florida
got a
Man.
good cryptid. Florida Man, right. The ghost of Florida Man passed.
Florida man, just go to the local Wawa, you'll find one.
Now, I've heard of Wawas. There's no such thing as a Wawa on the West Coast. What is a Wawa?
It's just a gas station with a whole lot of like food, made to order food and stuff like that. And
Why is everyone obsessed with Wawas?
This is kind of funny because of where Dan and I are originally from.
yeah, because there's a bit of a fight over which gas station do you prefer?
So in
Oh, all right.
especially in Maryland, because like it wasn't so bad where Dan was from because Dan was from Pittsburgh where they just had Sheets.
We know sheets.
Maryland, we had Wawa.
I've heard Sheets and Wawa mentioned together.
Maryland has both.
There's a culture war.
And people will fight you tooth and nail about which is better. I'm team Sheets, but down here in Florida, we don't have Sheets. We just have Wawa, which is really weird because Wawa is in Central Florida and then not anywhere in between here and like Northern Virginia. Like there's nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like for some reason they just brought here. I'm like,
It's right
Sheets,
there.
come down here, please.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
patronize you.
So like for me, Sheets has better food. Wawa has a better drink selection.
Mhm.
So it's one of those gas stations. It's like a convenience store. You can get like your pizza and hot
Yeah.
dogs and coffee. And
They have a
stuff
whole
too.
made to
And-
order thing. Like they have
And
touch
there's
screens and you're
another
like,
there's another entrant down here and a couple other southern places called Buc-ee's.
oh yeah.
So Buc-ee's is a place that was started as like a truck stop kind of thing. And the guy who we wanted to have the nicest, most clean, awesome bathrooms you could imagine. And
That's a good goal.
they've upheld that, but they've also become like a big made to order and they branded food and all this crap. And they're a big deal. The closest one to us is like Daytona. We have a friend who's gone there, like they would go drive up to North Carolina and they would stop there every time. And he bought all this
Road trip to Buc-ee's.
Yeah. Pretty
yeah,
much.
he bought all this crap. He's got T-shirts and all.
It's really funny how much stuff he has.
But like, there's even a wrestler who's like she's all about Sheets, and another guy's all about Buc-ee's, and they had a bit of
A feud.
a bit of an
So
online
Sheets
feud
just
about
feuds with everyone. Sheets
Yeah.
versus Wawa.
Sheets is
versus
pretty great, though.
Buc-ee's.
it. Sheets
Okay.
is pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
Brittany,
they
you
have,
said you're a Sheets girl, right?
I am.
They have
'cause,
mac and
like,
cheese bites that are just
Ooh.
Well, they have so much
So
good,
good.
like they have stuff like on the made to order thing. Like if you want mac and cheese, they're like, here's you can have a mac and cheese. But if you want to add like meat and all this other stuff, like here's how you can do all the toppings. And of course, I'm from Maryland, so like Old Bay is like part of our life. So you can add Old Bay to your mac and cheese and stuff like that. And so it's just stuff like
you
that.
can buy Old Bay ice cream in Maryland.
Yeah, we
Don't they
kind of
baptize kids with Old Bay? That's
They should.
Maryland.
they
Yeah.
do they do. It's a true story. My poor cousin. We always joke that he's really really smart. Like if you watch Big Bang Theory, he's like Sheldon level smart.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he's like he like basically got like full ride scholarships to like be in mathematics and stuff. Like he's like
Smart.
truly a genius. Yeah. And he's so awkward though, and very much like Sheldon. So imagine Sheldon when he was like maybe 7-8 years old. And he's like the one Marylander that doesn't like crabs. Like it's like you can't not like crabs in Maryland. And I guess one of our uncles was cracking a crab and some of the Old Bay shot him in the eye. And I've had that happen. It's very painful. And most kids, around that age would freak out. He does this. He covers his eye and goes, I don't understand why this has happened to me.
That's great.
And so like,
Such a Sheldon thing to say.
exactly. So we were like, that's what, because he said he didn't like Big Bang Theory. We're like, that's why you don't, because you are Sheldon. He's like, no, I'm not. And we're like, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, we're independent and we're pretty sure he's Sheldon. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for explaining. I had no idea. I hear people talk about Wawa and Sheets all the time on the East
Yeah.
Coast, and I didn't
Yep,
know.
it's a thing. It's like a little culture war. So
Okay.
That's
What-
a new
there's-
History Channel show. It's called Gas Station Wars.
that would be
There's
really
there's
funny.
two things in California that I wish we had: In-N-Out Burger and what was the other place we went?
The chicken
to?
place.
The chicken place.
It starts with a Z.
El Pollo
Zanku.
Loco?
Zanku.
I have not
Zanku
seen a
chicken.
Zanku.
It's
Oh,
it's like Southern California, LA.
I'll have to.
They have a
look for
garlic
one.
sauce that's to die for.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's really fun. They have, if you want to look up something crazy, if you like true crime stuff, there's what's called the Zanku chicken murders, where there was like murders within the family and stuff. Like it's wild.
Oh,
Like,
I'm looking that up
it is
right
wild.
now.
yeah, look up Zanku chicken. It's so good.
What are they like murdering each other over this like secret chicken recipe?
No, I guess like
I don't know. That garlic sauce is good enough.
No, I guess there was an issue in the family. Something happened where there was something happened within the family. I forget the full story of it, but there was a situation, I guess, where one family member killed another or something like that. But yeah, the recipe is like this hidden like recipe for this garlic thing that I guess like the owner like makes it from scratch like every day and stuff. And it's just, it's kind of a chain thing now, but I guess they like mass make it and then just drive it to all the stores. So
Yeah, it looks like there's 12 locations in the LA area, and I will be looking one up. First thing that came up was the Zanku chicken murders. So I'll be looking
It's very famous. Yeah.
Check it out on our podcast.
yeah, if you want a true crime,
That'd be a good
talk about
topic.
that. Yeah, and you could go get some because they have like takeout and stuff, and eat it while talking about it.
That's right. Combine two of my favorite things: munchies and true crime.
Exactly.
How can you go wrong? It's
Oh my
perfect.
God, their wraps. Oh, so good.
So good. Yeah,
So
no, you
good.
have to. It's
find one.
so good. But I say from there, I mean, I figure we could go into our ratings unless there's any other parts of it you guys want to talk about.
I did want to mention that I think there was a lot of creepy elements to this movie. Like this was bar none, excellent movie, 5-star. But one of the creepiest things at the very, very end of the movie, when the detective picks up the photo frame and starts getting burned, and then like just her face burns out. But
That
then
really happened.
That did. Yeah.
But then after a little bit, then they go back to the picture like a few minutes later and the face comes back together.
It's like they reversed it.
It
loved all the
reminded me of when she put the Ouija board back together
Mhm.
and then the face came
Yeah.
back. And I was like,
Yeah, the connection.
what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
And that real picture that happened. Yeah, it was like all burned up.
That's the part that makes it creepy is
Uh-huh.
that like that happened.
Yeah. There's a
What made
photo
that
of the
burn?
actual picture out
Mhm.
there online. It's creepy.
now, are the pictures at the end actual crime scene photos? Because I was looking stuff up and it didn't
No,
look
they are
like
not.
it was. Okay.
they're like scenes from the movie made to look like the crime scene.
They did that very well. I liked how they did that. Because
I thought it was real at first. I looked it up and I was like, did they actually get crime scene? No, apparently not.
That's
But
what
yeah,
I-
no,
I'm like, these look like movie photos, but they look like they could be real. So I did the same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. They hit the stylistic part right
They
on.
did that really well. I did one creepy thing I wanted to share. That's another true creepy thing is that they did a documentary and they interviewed the parents.
Mhm.
And at the end of the documentary, after they closed everything down, there's a voice in the static that says, "We're not done yet."
Oh, I've not seen that. Now I have to watch that.
Yeah, I
Like-
need to see that.
They talk about, I have to see if I can find it. Oh, yep, here it is. It's on Decrypt.
Okay.
Nice. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they said they hear a voice. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We haven't started yet.
Oh, wait.
So there's a voice at the end in the static that says, "We haven't started yet."
Oof, that's creepy.
Right?
And that's the thing with this. It reminded me a lot of like situations like the Enfield poltergeist and stuff like that. Except with all of those, I feel like the one thing is that people who are skeptics could argue there's something to gain from it. You know, kids are just being kids. This girl died. There was nothing to gain. You know, the family
Yeah.
has nothing to gain by reporting this. So
No, they lost
Right.
they lost a sister, a daughter,
exactly. So to me, it's like this is one of those that really I have a hard time with anyone that tries to debunk stuff like that because I'm like, I try to
It
be like,
wasn't fun and games.
no, exactly. I'm
Yeah.
like, and I can see the skeptic side of stuff because I think it's good to look at both sides because there are probably cases where things are fake, but like
Sure.
cases like, I think you guys even talked about the actual true exorcist case, right?
Mhm.
And that was in Cottage City, Maryland that it
Yep.
started before it went to, is it Minnesota, Minneapolis? Where was it? I
No,
forget.
it was
St. Louis, right?
St. Louis. That's right.
St.
Thank
Louis,
you.
Missouri.
Thank you. Yes. So, but that one, up until very, very recent, like last couple of years, the name of that boy was never released.
Right.
And they just recently, because basically the guy figured out who it was and interviewed him, but he agreed basically with the condition that until he died, they would never release his name. And he recently passed away and they finally released who it truly was. But it's like, apparently the guy was like literally like a rocket scientist
Oh, wow.
and never had a problem the rest of his life. But it was just like things like that, where it's like, he had probably really nothing to gain from that. And the fact that he didn't want to be found and was like, you can release my name after I'm dead. Pretty much like, I don't
That's
want
These
to
another
know.
people
commonality.
weren't fame seekers.
Exactly.
There are fame seekers. You know, there's a jerk in every crowd,
Mhm.
but these people generally aren't fame seekers. They don't want people to know what happened to them or who they are or the details of these events.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this girl literally died. This wasn't a teenage prank.
No. This is a family that was severely hurt by this, and the police involved, they have no reason to fabricate any of this.
Right.
In fact, if they wanted to downplay it, they could have fabricated it the other way, and they didn't. They truly documented what they saw.
And like you said, the way the Spanish police are
very skeptical.
If there was any element of this that did not happen, they would in no way, shape, or form go along with it, because that's not the mindset of the Spanish police.
It's not. Yeah,
now,
for sure.
In my research on the true story, I did find some explanations. There are some people that say that there could have been carbon monoxide poisoning in the house, and that would all the exact same types of symptoms, the hallucinations, the passing out, the seeing things, a lot of the feelings that people had, the dizziness, and even to the point of the police coming in the house, because they had some of the same feelings. They immediately felt nauseated. They felt dizzy. They felt strange temperature fluctuations. And some of that, again, could be due if the house had some carbon monoxide type poisoning going on, that could cause it. And also I've heard that the mother was kind of narcissistic, which I thought was kind of funny when they kind of gave that similar name to the nun, but the mom was a little bit interested in, she was just too emotionally invested in her children, and she was invested in getting a little attention for herself. And so some people try to posit that it was carbon monoxide poisoning and an overactive imagination and fame-seeking mother. But she didn't really, I guess I haven't really found too much evidence of her seeking fame, just rumors that people think that might be what caused it.
Yeah.
If there it was an apartment building, right? Correct. So if there was a gas leak, you'd think it wouldn't be
affect others.
Yeah, it wouldn't just be
the next family would be affected then.
Didn't have the problems either. So
and they did do tests on the young girl, and I don't believe that they found any evidence of something like that in her blood. And I do believe you can see elevated levels.
You can.
So so it's a theory, but there doesn't seem to be a lot to back it up. Just that the symptoms seem to be similar.
I just think sadly there's more evidence that it's true than there is that it's not.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I want to know where that Ouija board is, because man, I would rock playing with that thing right now.
Nope.
Michelle likes playing with fire.
It's all you.
I am that person.
No.
You can has it.
Yeah, I don't even know where mine is anymore. I know my mom still has it, I think, at her house. One day we'll find it.
I actually have a collection. I have about 9 Ouija boards now.
Wow.
And actually here in Salem, Massachusetts, there is a Ouija board museum.
Oh, wow.
Ouija board and spirit board museum, they call it.
Nice.
If folks are interested in all types of different beautiful, beautiful Ouija boards, the museum here is a great place to check out. But fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I go to the museum, but I'm not going to fuck around and I don't want to find out.
Right.
Same. I don't need to invite anything like that, especially down here in Florida. Like, I don't need Florida man haunting our house.
Yeah.
Half Florida man, half gator.
You'd get like Jack Sparrow down there.
Yeah.
Right. Enough strangers.
Yeah, you guys get like the Pirates of the Caribbean down there if you start playing with Ouija boards.
Yeah, Gasparilla Festival down here is pretty much literally that. People dressing like pirates and drinking a lot.
That sounds like a good time.
I've never actually been to it, but one of these years I plan to go.
I don't know if this counts as a horror movie, but one of the greatest 80s B movies is called Witchboard. It has like Tawny Katane in it.
I've heard of it.
Great movie. Another one, fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
People die at the end. But I just think that this particular movie, Verónica, is a good indication of certain people don't always believe in everything that other people believe in. But playing with a Ouija board irresponsibly, in my opinion, resulted in a teenage girl dying. And that's pretty shitty. That's pretty shitty. Made for a freaky movie, but these things do happen. And people think horror movies are just people's overactive imaginations. How many horror movies are based, at least loosely, on fact? We live in a horrific world.
Yeah,
we do.
Yeah, that's true.
Like a big horror movie, and we're all the producers.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you guys kind of introducing me to something that I may not have otherwise watched. Especially because the subtitle thing, I would have skipped over this on Netflix. And I am actually really glad I watched this movie, and I'm going to watch it again to see what else I pick up differently. And I appreciate that, because I would have just scrolled past this otherwise.
Yeah, well, I'm very glad that you guys enjoyed it, because
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
when I started listening to your podcast, I was like, I know what is a good movie that we can all talk about together.
Yeah, this was a good one.
It's a lot of foreign films really hit the right spots. There's a lot of ones that we could probably recommend.
Americans don't give enough foreign films enough credit,
Mhm.
for sure.
They don't. Oh, the general audience doesn't, and I
Yeah.
think that's definitely a mistake.
That's kind of what we've been doing with our podcast, try to like bring more of that to
Mhm.
the forefront, to be like, hey, you should check
What was
this
the
out.
one Korean one that was really creepy? That we-
Tale of Two Sisters.
yes.
Okay, so
That
have
was-
you guys seen the movie The Uninvited?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's actually based on this Korean movie called The Tale of Two Sisters. I actually
Oh.
I like The Uninvited for what it was, but after watching Tale of Two Sisters, I'm like, there was so much more that could have been done.
Mhm.
So
that figures. I'm writing this down. Now I'm going to watch it.
yeah, if you get a chance to watch it, that's one of the comparisons we're going to do at some point, is comparing those two. Because listen, I actually still like The Uninvited for what it was, but after watching this, I was like, oh my gosh, this took like the most basic concept from that movie when there was so much more you could have done with it.
Mhm.
And it was just like twist after twist after twist, like the whole time. You're like, what is happening?
That's fun in a movie. I like that when you can surprise you.
Yeah, so
And then that's what you don't get with a lot of these mainstream movies anymore, like Scream and Halloween. If I see Michael Myers one more time, okay, seriously, like, you know what's going to happen. You can predict the ending the minute you
Mhm.
start the movie.
Mhm.
These movies, you don't know what's happening turn to turn to turn.
yeah.
And I love that.
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
that. There's no predictability. You might be able to loosely say, I know how this is going to end, but minute by minute, you're kind of like, whoa, this
Mhm.
is, whoa,
Yeah.
and I like that. I like that.
Yeah, that's what we love. Because there was a thing I heard once where someone said, like, jump scares and like gore in movie as like that is the terror of the movie. Because like a good jump scare here and there, I think, is good. And movies that have a lot of gore but they have a great story are fine. But if that is the reason for the horror, I heard once someone said that's the equivalent of a comedian trying to tickle you to make you laugh. Like basically,
Yeah.
it's like the cheap, easy
It's
way.
horror by numbers
Right.
is what it is. It's
Yeah,
paint by
Dan always says
numbers.
instead of paint by numbers, it's horror by numbers when they do
That's
this.
what
Like,
it is. It's
they're
trash.
just like painting this story for you. And like
Yep.
one thing I heard someone say once about a lot of those movies is like they feel like that when they do the American remakes, it's like they have to hold your hand through the whole thing, explain every little thing. Whereas like I think the scarier things in a lot of horror movies is the unknown of it, like that
Yeah.
what you can
Unexplained.
think up is scarier than what they can show you.
Yeah, where you have to kind of fill the blanks in.
There's a movie we reviewed called The Wailing that I highly recommend.
Mm-hmm.
That's very Korean movie is very psychological, and there's a lot of stuff that's left to your imagination. I definitely recommend that.
I'm writing that one down too.
Well, in my opinion, blood and guts doesn't make horror.
Mhm.
You can go hack at somebody with a chainsaw, but that doesn't necessarily make it horror. And having my very first movie be The Exorcist as a child, you can blood and guts me to death, and that isn't going to scare me as much as the ghosties coming after me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't go for gross out humor. I go for psychological.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So the blood and guts factor doesn't necessarily make it horror, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I love that we all agree so much on all this.
I say let's
Some
roll to our
ratings.
ratings.
Yes.
Let's rate this bad boy.
Dan, you want to go first for the overall? This is our skull emoji.
Overall, as a film, I think I will give it a 4 out of 5. It is a brilliant example of a paranormal incident. That's one of the best examples of a real incident that happened. I think it was stylistically done very well. Only thing I might have been done a little differently is bring us some more of the real story into it, which I think it would have made it even creepier. But they did a really great job with the source material of what really happened, and it ended up as a very wonderful film. So 4 out of 5 for me.
Yep. And I was going to do the same 4 out of 5. I think it's one of those things where there's minor things here and there I'd change, but overall as a film, I enjoy it so much and I can rewatch it many times over and still get something out of it.
I enjoyed it more the second time. So
Yeah.
it's one that, it's a grower, and you notice more details, which is a sign of a good film.
I'm looking forward to watching it a second time. I agree. I'll have to also give it a 4 out of 5. I'm going to follow the professionals and say that, in my unprofessional opinion, I really, really liked it. Honestly, I'm not sure why I'm not giving it a 5, because it hit all the buttons for me. It was fun to watch. It was fun to pick out all the visual details, and the story just I liked how they kind of showed you the ending and then unwrapped it slowly until you get to that point. And I thought that was really well done.
I agree.
And I'll wrap it up with, and I'm no expert on movie ratings here, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Everything you guys said and more, the attention to detail. These were, to me, unknown actresses and actors, and they did a great job. Everybody, from start to finish of this movie, great job, great story. I agree with Dan. I wish they maybe would have added a tiny bit more of the real details, but what this lacked in blood and guts, it excelled at in messing with your mind.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree.
And this was actually Sandra Escanona's first film. This was her, like, for
Really?
Veronica, this was her first film. This was her debut.
Yeah, she was brilliant.
She did great. She did a really good job.
No, excellent job. Right down to the very little kids. The little kids even great, you know.
Phenomenal.
All the actors and actresses were great to me. They really, because that's part of it, you know, if the actors and actresses don't sell you. And these people, every single one of them sold the story to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they did.
I definitely don't feel like we're experts in this because we just rate this as fans. So rate this as fans, like however you feel. Because
we're just people who enjoy this stuff and try to have our own
as
approach.
far as I'm concerned with movies, there's no wrong opinion. Or Dan will tell you unless you like Saw and then you're wrong. But he always has to hate on Saw at some point throughout our show. But the way I look at it,
worst
is like,
franchise of all time.
But the way I look at a lot of it is just, you know, if you enjoyed it, that's what matters. So even if it's something where, even if someone does enjoy Saw, Dan, they're not wrong.
Yeah, they are. But they can enjoy it. Just don't try to give me a legitimate reason why, because it's torture porn and it's crap.
That's why I haven't seen them. I
think torture porn would be more enjoyable.
Well, a lot of the thing I don't like about it is I feel like they had a really good concept and they executed it badly, is my opinion on Saw. So
if you want to see a good concept like that, watch the Cube series. It's much better.
Cube is very interesting.
You know, I gotta say, I have defense on the first Saw. The only reason I went and saw Saw, I see Saw.
Yep.
We talked briefly about wrestling. You put Kane in a movie and I'm watching. I don't care what you say. You put Kane in a movie and I'm watching.
He did a horror movie where he was the main antagonist and it was so bad.
I know. It was disappointing.
I forget the name of it. It was so terrible.
But yeah, you know, you're going to put a WWE wrestler in a movie and I'm going to watch it just for the fact that you sucked me in that way.
All right. So scare factor. How scary was this? Me, I think I'd probably give it about a 4. If it wasn't based on a true story, it might be a little lower on scare factor, but the fact that this is a real thing made it a lot scarier to me. And they nailed all the right notes from the real story to make you feel it. And so I think it was a pretty scary movie. So it was way above average.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same as well. Actually, I think it's one of those things I always feel like that I have to be like mortified forever for me to give it a 5 is how I usually rank stuff.
It has to be groundbreakingly scary.
Like, I think one of the few ones I might have given a 5 to was Konjihem Haunted Asylum, the Korean movie, because that movie, oh my gosh, like I will have nightmares for the rest of my life after that. So, but yeah, it's up there. So yeah, definitely I think a 4 is fair. What are y'all thinking?
I think I'm going to give it a 3, actually. Not because I didn't love the scare in it. I did. I love the horror. I loved the creepiness of it. I thought it was very well done, particularly the subtle creepiness of some of the parts. Like the one time when they're showing the mold and the mold under the bed is in the shape of the demon claw coming out and the body shapes, you know, and like in the mold on the mattress. It's just subtle little things like that. I loved the creepiness, but I'm going to give it a 3 because there's a couple times where I was jumping because I kind of knew what was going to happen, or there was a little bit of a scare, but I wasn't ever really terrified. I liked the story. I really liked it. It was definitely creepy and I loved all of the atmosphere, but I'm going to watch it again and I won't be scared at all. And for me to have, I think, higher than a 3, it really has to still be scary and still make me jump and scream and throw my popcorn and all of that. So I loved it. I loved the creepiness of it. I think it was phenomenal. But as far as like scare level, I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to actually go and give it a 4, but there's a couple of reasons, you know, kind of in the same thought with Laylla. I have seen and experienced a lot of crazy stuff in my lifetime, and this is definitely up there with stuff, but definitely not the scariest or creepiest by far. But I will say 4 because this is based on true events and someone died as a result of paranormal activity. But as far as some of the actual events that happened, I've seen and I've heard of and to a certain extent experienced worse. But the fact that it is real and that a teenage girl did die due to paranormal activity, definitely I'll give it a 4. Good movie to watch, good movie to rewatch, totally worth it. Better than Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
That's high praise coming from Chelle.
Especially like the original Halloween, I love past it's a legendary series and the quality's up and down all over the place. But like I think the horror of the first Halloween was that ordinary neighborhood, crazy person, things can happen. But I think Black Christmas was even crazier in that respect. But
that one's scary.
See, over my head, I don't know. I'm not familiar with Black Christmas.
Black Christmas
is creepy as hell. Look into it.
So like a lot of people will tell you that the first movie that had like the whole like the callers coming from inside the house thing is from When a Stranger Calls, but it's actually Black Christmas is the first one to do that. So if you get a chance to watch it,
getting longer. Right.
Yeah, if you get a chance to watch it,
it's legendary.
Good. It's very good. Yeah, so they remade it, and the remake is, from my understanding, terrible. I never actually watched it because a lot of remakes are not good. I feel like one of the only times they've done a really good remake is something like The Thing was really good. The Fly was good, but it doesn't take
the new Jumanji.
I actually haven't watched it, but I've heard it's good.
It looks fun.
Yeah, I would like to watch that.
Yeah, it's the one I could think of. It was fun.
The Invisible Man was great.
I heard they're remaking Swamp Thing, and I already am almost kind of like, You can. How are you remaking that one? Good?
The originals are great.
Yeah,
I went to a screening with the guy who made it, and he was just such a crack up.
That's what I'm saying. How are you going to remake that and have it be good?
Yeah. Sometimes like just leave it alone. It's fine. Like I don't mind when they do something like with The Invisible Man, where it was a totally not. It's like they took the name and made their whole own thing. I think that's great. If they do something like that, fantastic. Do that, or even like we mentioned one of the Mummy films, like with Brendan Fraser. Totally different than the original Mummy films, but they're hilarious and great. So they're their own thing. Like
I was thinking Toxic Avenger. That's the one I went to the screen. Toxic Avenger is ridiculous.
That's funny. All right, so jumping to music and sound design, Dan, what do you want to give it?
I loved the music. It was really varied, and I think it fit a lot of the moods. There was a lot of very, very well done synthesizer music. Brings me back to like John Carpenter-esque kind of music, and very heavy synths, and it gave a really good aura and a kind of a foreboding feel to it. A lot of the musical selections were actually really poignant, and I enjoyed the music a lot. I would give it probably a 4 out of 5. Not quite legendary, but really, really well done.
I was going to do similar. I was going to give it a 3, but there's no like negative impact or anything like that. Just to me, it's one of those, like you said, I like the synthesizer. I like that, it had that John Carpenter feel, but again, wasn't anything that was totally groundbreaking. So for me, it's a 3.
Yeah, I was going to go the same. I was going to give it a 3 because I liked the music. It did feel like it went along with things, but I didn't really notice it too much. Nothing was hugely groundbreaking, but I'm actually going to give it a 4. And that's because some of the music, if not all of it, was the band, the t-shirt and the posters that are throughout the whole in the movie, like in her bedroom, the t-shirt and stuff she wears. It's the band that's doing the music for the soundtrack. So that bumped it up to a 4 for me because I like that.
I do like that.
It was a good tie-in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it a 3 as well, because everything was appropriate style music at the appropriate moments, but it wasn't, I didn't feel like it really kind of stood out. It was there and you noticed it, but it wasn't anything to stand out. I don't think it didn't take away anything, but I don't really think it contributed anything as well. It was appropriate, and everything that they put in there was well placed and definitely good, but it could have not been there. And I don't know if I would have noticed its absence.
For sure. All righty. Moving on to effects. So for effects, we kind of count a little bit of everything. So for me, I'm actually going to give it a 4 for effects because I loved, especially with like the camera work, like scenes like where she, like when her friends like abandon her and she's walking and you can see that like people around her are moving backwards and it's like everyone around her is like in reverse. That just to me was like embodied like the feeling you must have in that, like just everything is wrong. And then where she like looks like she passes by herself and then she goes to turn and her hair kind of turns with her and stuff. And little things like that, when she sits up in bed and the camera moves exactly with her, or when she's jumping through like to try to save Antonito and she breaks the glass and goes into the bathroom and she falls and hits her head, the camera like perfectly aligns with her the entire time. And little things like that I always think are just really extra fun. And again, little things like what looked almost like the mold and the shape of the demon under the bed and everything. Just, I feel like all those things give it just that little extra oomph to bring it up to the 4. It's almost a 5, but I'm gonna go with a 4.
Yeah, I think I would go with a 4.5 in my not, I don't watch a ton of movies, but I liked everything that was done here. And right from the very beginning, the whole look of it with the rain and the atmosphere, they caught the atmosphere so well. And with her yawning, like in the beginning, it looks like she's screaming, but it's actually she's yawning, and just little things like that through the whole thing. And there wasn't a lot of special effects, but what was there, everything was done so well, I thought, and it just made it all seem so real. It was all done so seamlessly and perfectly in with the theme of the movie and in with what was happening. You just didn't really notice anything. It just, again, with the demon being subtly in the background, and I like the backward scenes as well. And sometimes where like the text of everything on like the posters in the background were all backwards at one point, and so you could tell you were in kind of a mirror universe. And so again, subtle stuff, nothing huge or groundbreaking, but really well done.
One of the special effects I really liked, and I thought they did a really good job with, because some movies can really mess this up. One of the final scenes of the movie towards the very end, when her body is up in the air and the demon is trying to shove his fist down her throat. They did a very good job visually with that.
That was creepy. Some
productions don't do as good, but that looked real. They did that was a good special effect. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of special effects throughout it, but what little ones they had, very well. They did very well.
Yeah.
I definitely give it, a 4-star. Nothing, this wasn't Avatar by any stretch, but it was definitely they definitely, what they did do, they did very well, and they knew not to be too heavy on it. Great production.
I like when things are, especially like some effects, like you said, like Avatar and things like Star Wars, all those can have like amazing effects and they look great. But for horror, there's something always to me about like the practical effects that always.
Less is more with horror.
Exactly.
Less is more.
Yeah, practical effects are always a one-up for me. They had a lot of pretty good practical effects in this. A lot of the different things with like the cross and everything. And there's like, obviously the monster itself, like the black figure was definitely CGI and stuff, but I think they did a pretty solid job with it.
Parts of it I think were actual costume walking around.
Some of it were. Some of like when they showed like the face, I think were more CGI.
Yeah, I think it
like that
depended on the scene, but yeah.
But I think they did a really good job with the effects. I would probably give it a 4 as well. It's not like legendarily groundbreaking or anything, but everything fit. Everything was poignant. It was well done. It gave you a real sense of dread and foreboding and everything. I think the effects matched what the feel that they were trying to get.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And our last one is gore level. So we more or less rate like how gory was this? Like if you can't handle gore, don't watch, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Gore level, I would say it's a 2. It's not really gory. There's moments where not really many gross out moments. Actually, it's more psychological than anything. So it's pretty low. Actually, I think I'll revise. I think I give it a 1 on gore. There's pretty much no gore in this at all.
Yeah, other than like minor things like her like having the bruises, you could maybe count towards that. But for me, I was at one point I think she does get scratched.
On the hand down the throat is a little gross, but
it was a little gross when you could see the kids pulling the flesh away from her.
Yeah, they're biting her.
Yeah. Later it's a bruise, but that part was a little gory.
There might be some folks who might feel a little bit of gore when she's got the piece of the mirror in her hand and then goes to go at her throat. But I agree with Dan. I'd say if there was such thing as a 0, I'd say 0, but we'll go with 1 star. There's no real gore in this movie, which I love. I'd rather the psychological than the gore.
Agreed. You can have both. Like a zombie movie will probably have more like mid-level
Mhm.
levels of gore or whatever, but you can have an intriguing story where it's just kind of part of the background.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This didn't require it, and they didn't do that horrible thing where they just shoehorn it in just to make it more splattery.
Who needs gore when you have a Ouija board?
Exactly.
I was
Yeah.
fully expecting them to. At the end, I was desperately afraid for Antonito. I was desperately afraid for him, and because I was so sure that that's where the gore was going. I would have to also give it a 1 because I think other than the kids fighting, there really wasn't anything.
Mhm.
But I was sure that they were going to have some gory end scene, and I was going to have to cry over little Antonito because he was adorable.
I know. I was so happy when he lived, but I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
not Antonito.
Yeah, invocation, drawing the invocation symbol aside, I forgive him. He's little.
Yeah, he was a little kid. He didn't know any better. He was like, pictures on
This
wall.
is great. Yeah.
Sure, I'll draw out Satan with this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the oddball and give it a 2, only because for my personal rating, when I do gore, if it's a 1 means there's 0 like blood at all for me. And again, this is all just personal rating for me because of the scene where the glass shatters and very early on, she's got the blood dripping on there and the hands, them biting at her.
Mhm.
That I'm gonna still give it the 2 for, but it's it'd be like kind of like a 1.5 to 2 kind of thing. It's very low. It's something the average person could handle.
It's a diet too.
A diet too. I like it. It's a 2-0 if Coke was making it, right?
Right.
You're the Diet Coke of gore. Just
There you
1
go.
calorie, not gory enough.
If Dr. Evil is
Gory
rating
legs.
things.
Yeah.
You're the Diet Coke of evil.
It was well done, actually.
This was so much fun. Well, all good. And I'll sign us off. So this has been We All Pod Down Here. Thank you all so much, Chelle and Layla. We had a blast. I hope we can do it again
Thank you.
sometime.
Yes, for sure. Welcome
This is
anytime. It's been awesome.
Absolutely.
This has been a blast, guys. So much
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
Our logo was designed by Emmanuel Arroyo.
Our website is weallpoddownhere.com.
Email us at weallpoddownhere@gmail.com
And you can follow our shenanigans at weallpod on Twitter.
and at weallpoddownhere on Instagram and Facebook.
And feel free to suggest a movie you want us to review.
Or if you just want to suggest something to make me really uncomfortable.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.